you will hear for the first time from a father furious over the death of his 5-year-old son.
He says the Department of Child Services failed to protect his child after dozens of reports of child abuse. Our Alexis McAdams has that story tonight.
The sweetest soul you could ever meet. I took him everywhere. He was attached to my hip everywhere we went, even at home.
Brayson Price was just 5 years old when he died.
He was my life, and he will always continue to be my life.
You can see all the bruising.
Police say Brayson was abused for years. His death was ruled a homicide, the cause intentional overdose and suffocation. His mom and her boyfriend are now serving time, found guilty in connection to Brayson's death.
39 years is a long time, but how much is a child's life worth? Is it fit?
Brayson's father, Justin Morgan, never got to say goodbye to his son, who he only had supervised visits with because of ongoing custody disputes.
I was living with her up until he was about 1.5 years. Okay. That's when she started to cut me out of Brayson's life. It got very, very difficult to see him.
While Morgan was fighting for custody, police say Brayson was stuck in a living nightmare of repeated abuse. Court records even show Megan Price and Jason Ingalls Googled the phrases most painful forms of torture and killing techniques.
The first time I called DCS was when he broke his leg.
Court records show the extent of the abuse the little boy endured. Over the years, Brayson suffered a broken arm, broken femur, and numerous burns and bruises. In 2014, an aunt called DCS after she noticed a handprint and bruises all over the child's body. Then in 2015, someone called to alert the agency the child had a broken femur. Morgan told DCS his son identified Ingalls as the abuser. In 2016, a school bus aide called DCS, telling them she overheard Price threatening Brayson at the bus stop and that the child was covered in bruises. At that same time, Morgan says a school nurse checked Brayson for injuries every day, then sent the photos to DCS.
One of them, he had a busted lip. She would constantly find bruises on him, all over his body. And she would take pictures. And she gave these pictures to DCS. And still the balls dropped.
Within days, Price pulled Brayson out of school. She told investigators her son would self-harm.
This is her story every single time. It's self-inflicted. He did it to himself. How can a 35-pound little 5-year-old boy hurt himself?
About a month later, Brayson was dead. Now, 2 years after Brayson's death, Morgan still puts much of the blame on DCS. He filed a wrongful death lawsuit claiming the agency was complicit in the death of his son. According to the lawsuit, DCS received at least 11 reports of suspected abuse prior to Brayson's death. 7 adults, including Morgan himself, a teacher, a school nurse, a bus aide, a guidance center employee, and other family members called. According to court documents, each time the state agency could not substantiate any of the allegations.
These are people from all walks of life that tried to protect him.
They're not the only ones to blame. The Department of Child Services, if they would have stepped in, if they would have removed the child on even one of those occasions and actually tried to get to the bottom of how this is occurring, he'd still be alive.
Things need to be changed.
I reached out to the Department of Child Services. A spokesperson with the agency tells me they do not comment on pending litigation or specific cases due to privacy concerns. Tonight, Ingalls and Price remain behind bars. It's a story we'll continue to follow.
I felt like I could have done things a lot better.
It is a deeply heartbreaking case. That Anderson mother you just heard, she is behind bars this evening after her daughter's death is now ruled a homicide. Her boyfriend is also under arrest after that little girl died Saturday because of severe injuries. Fox 59's Gabby Gonzalez talks to this mom from inside the Madison County Jail. She has much more on the family's history with DCS. Watch, Gabby.
Through tears, Kayla Hudson admitted that she could have done more to save her daughter's life. Now she's sitting in the Madison County Jail and says she must prepare to bury her only daughter instead of celebrating her second birthday. This mother walks through the Madison County Jail with handcuffs and regrets.
I could have opened my eyes a little bit more, but I didn't. You know, like, I didn't realize this is the person that I brought into my child's life.
Her 23-month-old daughter Paisley died Saturday. The coroner saying the toddler had a fractured skull, internal bleeding, and too many bruises to count.
And I didn't realize the severity of it until I lost my daughter, and that's when things started, coming into place. Like, maybe stuff was going on.
Both Hudson and her boyfriend Ryan Ramirez are behind bars in connection to Paisley's death. Hudson says Ramirez watched her kids while she worked Friday night. The next morning, she says she found Paisley dead.
Don't ignore things that you think are going on, and don't just believe words somebody tells you. Because I believe that if that wasn't the case, my daughter would still be here today.
But some say it's hard to believe Hudson was unaware of potential abuse.
There were starting to become more signs, more bruises, more cuts, more marks.
Clarissa Manuel regularly babysat Paisley and her older brother.
Anytime I would talk to Kayla about it, she always had an excuse. Like, she fell.
Clarissa says she contacted DCS twice. The last time in May when she spoke to a DCS worker in person.
I had pictures on my phone. I showed her. They said that it would be dealt with. And they had three or four open cases already pending against her.
Hudson today acknowledging at least 2 encounters with DCS in the past, but said they didn't keep checking in even after Paisley had a fractured bone.
And have they followed up with you in any way?
No. Formal charges are still pending in this case. The prosecutor's office has until Thursday at 1 p.m. to get those charges filed in court. We'll, of course, keep you updated.
More charges in the death of an Anderson baby. Tonight, this man, Dylan Tate, is facing charges of neglect in connection with Harlan Haynes' death. According to court documents, Harlan had extensive trauma. Investigators think Tate may have tried to cover up Harlan's injuries by crashing his car before taking him to the hospital. Tate was dating the baby's mother, who is also facing charges. Thanks for joining us tonight at 6. I'm Dan Spieler.
And I'm Fanchon Stinger. It is a deeply disturbing story, and now more disturbing revelations and some very serious questions tonight about how the Department of Child Services handled baby Harlan's case. We are now learning the baby's uncle was a DCS caseworker himself and says he even tried to get custody of the child after the first allegations of abuse back in December.
Fox 59's Gabby Gonzalez has been looking into the timeline of DCS and its involvement in this case, and she joins us now with the latest information. Gabby, what do we know?
Well, Harlan's uncle was a DCS caseworker out of Grant County from last fall through March 1st. That's according to the state. Now, the uncle's lawyer says that the agency this man worked for failed him and his family by not doing more to protect this child. Now, the state says that the uncle resigned. He says that he was actually terminated and locked out of DCS's systems.
1-year-old Harlan Haynes' life was cut short in February. He was taken to the hospital struggling to breathe. A napkin or paper towel was later found in his airway. The injuries on his body ranging from widespread bruising to bite marks on his legs and injuries to his genitals.
It's absolutely unimaginable what baby Harlan suffered.
Bob Summerfield represents Harlan's dad and says they believe DCS did not take the right approach to prevent the baby's death.
And because of the lack of procedures, because of the lack of protocols, baby Harlan died a horrific death.
DCS first came in contact with Harlan on December 27th. Hospital staff contacted them after the baby was brought in with a fractured leg and other injuries. On January 19th, the assessment into the abuse allegations was finalized and approved without any follow-up. On February 25th, Harlan died.
The hospital called DCS. DCS was involved. The police should have been involved in this case and weren't, and there's really not a good explanation for it.
Why didn't they just call the police? Why didn't they just go ahead and move Harlan to a safer location just for a maybe?
The DCS assessment shows doctors said Harlan's December injuries were, quote, concerning for inflicted trauma, but not definitive. A DCS caseworker eventually writing there was, quote, no evidence to support physical abuse against the alleged perpetrator.
This child was returned to this family. No one from DCS even went to do a home visit to see what was going on.
Summerfield says Harlan's uncle, who was a DCS employee, was willing to take in the child back in December to keep him safe, but no action was taken.
He was in a tough spot. He could not intervene per policy as a DCS employee. He could intervene as an uncle with his wife and beg for him to give them baby Harlan.
And we reached out to DCS about this case today, and while they say they can't comment on the specifics of this, they did tell us, quote, "It is heartbreaking anytime there's a death of a child. DCS investigates every case to the best of their ability with the information they have on hand. DCS staff are passionate about their jobs and do everything in their power to keep our most vulnerable safe." We'll, of course, keep you updated with anything that happens in Harlan's case moving forward. In the newsroom tonight, I'm Gabby Gonzalez, Fox 59 News.
Such a disturbing case and a lot of tough questions still. Gabby, thank you. The findings of a 6-month review of Indiana's troubled Department of Child Services have now been released today.
Yeah, that report is out. We have it. The report is revealing a culture of fear among staff and serious issues with how cases are being handled. Fox 59's Gabby Gonzalez has much more on how the administration is responding.
In a room filled with Department of Child Services caseworkers, supervisors, and even some foster parents, the problems plaguing the agency were front and center.
All of you have been working in a system that hasn't, again, quite frankly, taken as good of care of you as we should have.
Page after page detailing the staggering number of children now in the system, up 63% since 2013, along with the constant turnover of staff, many handling too many cases.
I said at the very outset, I wanted the good, the bad, the ugly. Now we have a game plan.
New DCS Director Terry Stigdon says part of that plan is ensuring staff feel valued with pay raises and mental health services.
Changing the culture starts with me. I was met with total transparency from the team and an ability to find out what is it that we need to do to change this culture of fear.
The governor announcing he's moving $25 million from the state's surplus to DCS to implement all the recommendations outlined in this report.
We said at the very outset that we were going to take it very seriously.
But the Hoosier State has been here before. 5 other reviews of DCS in the last 5 years, many of those recommendations never implemented.
What's different this time?
Well, this is on my watch. And what's different is we're going to act on these recommendations. I am focused 100% out the windshield, not in the rearview mirror.
But some Democrats say action from the legislature is still necessary to get to the root of all these issues.
I understand why the governor doesn't want to look and quote in the rearview mirror as to how this happened, how we have all these problems, all this wasted money, all these recommendations that sit on shelves. I know why he doesn't want to look there. I don't know why the legislature doesn't want to look there.